Hi creepy friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today I'm bringing you another horror recommendations for series, and in this video we're going to talk about general fiction. So if you just read general fiction, then these are some horror recommendations I would give you if you're wanting to dabble into some more horror stories. So let's get into it. So the first book I would recommend is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. This is a story following a mother-daughter relationship, but they are cannibals. So this is a emotional story. It's got the perspective of like a 6-year-old who is obviously still learning and growing. She sees her mother as everything to her. They set out traps in their little forest where they live to collect strays, and these strays are humans, and then they would eat them. But this is more than just cannibals. It's really a take on like love. This little girl has so much love for her mum and tries to do everything possible to be everything that her mum wants, but unfortunately that's not the case, and she starts to feel replaced when this new woman enters into her mother's life. It's a horror story in itself, of course, but it's also folky. It's got the forest, it's got the moors. It's just a dark story, but it is so emotional. It made me cry, and it is one of the best books that I read in 2025, so I would highly recommend The Lamb if you're wanting to dabble into a little bit more horror. My next recommendation would be Nestlings by Nat Cassidy, simply because this is more gothic, so it doesn't have a real deep horrific thing as such. It's like talked upon, it's described, but it's very, whimsical. It's very fictionalized, your general sort of vibe, but such an incredible read. It's like Rosemary's Baby, but we do have a disabled main character who is a mother and does anything possible to make sure that her child is safe in this new apartment that just is so off. It's really good. It's got some vampiristic elements without specifically saying vampires, which is why I thought I would put it on the list, because it is such a great gothic read. My next recommendation is a bit of a chunky book, but that is The Reformatory by Tananarive Due. I've just read this one recently and I put it off for so long because of how long the story is. It is so worth the time put into this. I love this book so much. It should be a required read for anybody, because it covers so many things. Essentially, this is based on a real life reformatory school. Obviously the horrific elements are centered around humans in this story. It is set in Florida in the 1950s when a little black boy who is accused of assaulting another white boy is sent to this reformatory school, where it is known that the children don't really leave, and the horrors, like I said, is mainly from the hands of humans, and that is kind of symbolic to the real world, which is why this is so heavy of a story to read, but it is so worth it. It's a good way to kind of learn the horrific natures that did happen back in this time period, but also reminiscent of certain things that are spewing today. But aside from the human horrors, this book interweaves the supernatural and the ghostly elements, and it is kind of powerful to mix the two of those things together. Such an incredible required read. If you pick anything from this list, make it The Reformatory, because this is so dark, disturbing, and really does hit home. Because it's so powerful. My next recommendation is going to be an apocalyptic story, and that is Moon of the Crusted Snow. I freaking love this book so much. It is set in a remote village that become cut off. They're having to survive on their own without resources, and it really does pose the question, like, how do we survive when infrastructure is cut off? This is a bit of a slow read, but if you're into more like general stories, a lot of them I would assume are quite slow building and cover a lot of insightful topics. I would say that Moon of the Crusted Snow would definitely be worth your time. It is so powerful, an apocalyptic read, and it's set in northern Ontario during the winter, so such an atmospheric story. Highly recommend. My next recommendation is Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This is another wintry story that is set on a mountain. We're following a couple who live on the mountain, isolated from everything, but we have some hikers who start climbing the mountain and they awaken a monster, and these two like perspectives essentially kind of collide together. It's a real look into domestic violence and couples behavior. It also has, you know, your monster element, but the theme of the monster is both supernatural as well as human. Such an incredible read, and it's one I often recommend to people, so pick it up if you want to read something that's got more wintry, darker vibes that has a physical monster. My next recommendation is The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is a generational story following a granddaughter and the grandmother at different periods of time, as well as a professor in the 1930s. And it's basically, we're following a young woman in the 90s who is studying and is making this book her project. So she starts to uncover certain things and how her grandmother is linked to the whole story, and she starts to uncover secrets between, you know, the 30s and also the 1900s. I think it's 1908. Yeah, it is 1908. So it's basically following dangers, and it has a heavy theme of witchcraft. So if you're interested in those things, then The Bewitching might be for you. I have a bit of a darker story to recommend at this point, and that is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. I love this book so much. It's an insight into the meat industry and slaughterhouses, but set in a futuristic world where animals are not edible anymore, so they're having to farm humans. This gives you a real look into the capitalistic mindset of slaughterhouses, and as a vegetarian, I really love how this book showcases what is done to animals, but from a human perspective, because people who eat meat don't really look into like the actual harming that they do in slaughterhouses and things like that. So if you use a human to portray what's currently happening in the world, and that's what makes this book a lot more extreme, because it is a bold take on the farming industry as a whole. I'm not trying to call out anybody who eats meat, by the way, if that's something that you do, which is absolutely fine, each to their own, but Tender is the Flesh is a real look into that industry and how harmful it is. But yeah, this is such an incredible read. I would suggest maybe not eating or drinking while reading this story, but I highly recommend it. It is such an incredible book. And that's all the recs I have for you today. If you have any more in the comments, let me know, and I will catch you in the next one. But until then, keep your pages turning and embrace the darkness. Bye!